Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a little rundown of the civs, a little bit of information about them, a little Riley Knight sort of action, bit of history, bit about them in the game, their connection to Scotland, and their connection to Scotland in the present day as well. So let's start at the top of the list there with the Byzantines. So the Byzantines were chosen to represent the Romans, Roman influence in Scotland. In game, the Byzantines are a defensive civilization, but they're quite versatile as well, obviously because of their cheap trash and the open tech tree. So we'll expect to see Byzantines picked on, I think, open, closed, but more frequently probably the hybrid maps, I think, is where Byzantines will excel. So the Byzantines maybe more closely represent the Eastern Roman Empire and what would now be Greece and Turkey, but we shouldn't overlook the relationship between the Romans and Scotland. So the Roman Empire existed in Britain, in what is now England, until the 5th century. However, they never extended their rule to Scotland during this time, and most famously erected 2 large walls, Hadrian's Wall and Antonine's Wall. Hadrian's Wall is going to feature in the tournament in the Maps of Wall, so that will be an exciting little bit of Roman influence there. But yeah, the Romans never quite made it up to Scotland, apart from the some scouting parties, and Scotland was just too far. They just couldn't quite get it under their grasp. So in the present day, Scotland doesn't really have much of a relationship with Greece or Turkey, other than I would say as a holiday destination. And so that covers the Byzantines.
I could be going to Turkey. Why do you think I'd be going to Turkey?
For holiday.
Yeah, but why would think of how I look?
Oh, get a hair transplant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there we go.
And I might get my teeth done in Turkey. Yeah, that would cover the both of us. And then we'd be straight 10 out of 10s.
Yeah, easy. I've seen like people post pictures of airplanes right back from Turkey. It's just like all the guys with the shit around their heads, and obviously all the red dots. It's so funny, like seeing 2 lines of just guys like that. It's hilarious.
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, I've never been, but I don't think I would go to get myself sorted that way. Hey, I'm losing my hair as well, but no.
I know, you're like
doing it gracefully.
It's coming for you. It's coming for you. It's even worse when you got your headphones on like that.
Yeah, I don't do myself any favors, but whatever. I'm not here to look pretty. I'm here to cast
and
to talk history.
Yeah, anoint us with your knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, feel free to stomp me in the chat, guys. If I think I've said something wrong, if you think I've said something wrong, go ahead and correct me. I'm no history buff.
You've never said anything wrong ever. Don't worry about it.
Let's talk the Britons now. So the Britons, of course, represent the English of the High and Late Middle Ages. In the game, the Britons are a fantastic archer civilization with a very smooth early game due to their faster working shepherds, and a strong mid game due to the crossbowmen with extra range and the cheaper town centres. So we can expect to see Britons played on mostly land maps, I would say, both open and closed. So the Britons, IRL, fought many wars with the Celtic people of Scotland, such as those in the First War of Scottish Independence, namely the Battle of Falkirk and the Battle of Stirling Bridge. If you're familiar with the campaigns in the game, you will know the Britons' campaign is based around the exploits of Edward Longshanks, known as the Hammer of the Scots. In the final mission of the Britons' campaign, the player kills Scottish heroes William Wallace and Robert the Bruce and takes Stirling Castle. So, after the First War of Scottish Independence, there was, of course, a Second War of Scottish Independence. Crucially, however, Scotland remained independent after both of these wars. And it did so right up until the Act of Union at the beginning of the 18th century, when Scotland and England joined up to form the United Kingdom. And so Scotland's and England's deep relationship continues to this day as we hurtle towards a third war of Scottish independence.
Well, are we counting the last referendum as a war? Potentially our fourth.
Yeah, a war on Twitter for sure, I'd say.
Oh yeah, I mean that's You're probably on like episode 7 or 8 on that one.
Yeah.
That's been going on for a while.
Um.
Maybe you can just
Yeah.
combine all of it together. Never really stopped.
No, it's an eternal it's an eternal war.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
Britain's.
right, Cerberus. Braveheart covers this period of history, like the William Wallace campaign and the Edward Longshanks campaign are like bang on the like Braveheart times. I'm pretty sure William Wallace is the main character in Braveheart.
But let's just be absolutely clear when it comes to Scottish history. William Wallace and Robert the Bruce had no interaction whatsoever because they were completely separated in terms of time. That's one thing that people get uh, quite confused on within the history.
Okay. Um. I okay. I'll take your word on that. I believe you.
They lived in totally different times.
Interesting.
It's just one of these things that Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I've heard of other anachronisms in that film. Like, I think someone's wearing a watch. Like, you know,
I
I don't
mean,
know. But
Starbucks got into Game of Thrones, which is kind of cool. So
really,
I don't know how the
right?
editors didn't catch it, but in the last season, there's there is a spot where Daenerys is she's on like on the table or something, and yeah, there's a Starbucks cup at the side.
Wow, that's bad.
uh,
Okay. Well, I'm almost. I mean, Game of Thrones isn't real, right?
yeah, but
That's not
it is based on a fantasy novel,
true.
and
True. Very
fantasy novels are pretty
thoughtful.
good.
I've heard so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. More on that later.
Yep.
Shall we move on to Celts? Everybody's favorite.
Yes. The
Well,
Celts.
they were everybody's favorite until Huang butchered their boys, but
Yeah, the Celts.
yeah.
So the Celts, of course, represent the people native to Scotland and Ireland during the high and the early and high Middle Ages. So in the game, the Celts have a very strong and versatile early economy bonus due to the faster working lumberjacks. So while their late game army composition of siege and infantry is strong, it requires a really strong economy, meaning that the Celts are seen mostly on maps in which they can pile on the pressure in the early and the mid game, or they can boom up and take control of choke points in the late game. The Celtic culture and language spread to Scotland and Ireland in as early as the 3rd century BC. The Roman Empire, of course, made short work of the Celtic people in Gaul and in England, but never quite made it to Scotland or Ireland. And it was here that Celtic culture and language remained intact. The Celts were often depicted as barbarians who wore little clothing and painted their skin with a blue dye made from the woad plant. And this isn't entirely true, of course. However, the blue woad dye lives on in the woad raider, which is the unique unit of the Celts.
Did
The
you
Scottish language.
did you just make that up?
What?
Which part of it?
The woad dye.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's real, and that's why woad raiders have the
Okay. Okay.
blue paint on them.
I trust you. I do trust you.
Um, yeah, no, it's real. Although the flowers of the woad plant are yellow, so I don't understand like what their manufacturing process is, but they did a very good job to create a blue dye out of it. Anyways, the Scottish language, otherwise known as Gaelic, still spoken as the first language in some remote areas in the west of Scotland, is heavily influenced by the Celtic language, and it shares many of its features with Irish. So the two Celtic peoples are related in that way. And nowadays, Celtic culture plays an important role in kind of creating a national mythology and national identity in Scotland. It's who we are.
Love it. I mean, it's who we are. I mean, of course, Celts. The actual word Celts refers to a much. It's more of an umbrella term, isn't it? But in terms of AoE2, it's definitely specific to Scots.
Yeah, like the Celtic people were like an Indo-European people that lived, like the culture and the language was like all over Europe from like it's like the 2nd century BC up until like the Middle Ages. So like
Yeah.
it's very like a lot of these civs, or the culture or language that they refer to, or the ethnicity, like some of them don't all refer to the same type of thing. So um they've been, they're some of them are quite loosely associated with Scotland, but I'd say Celts is the one we can say them is the
Oh yeah,
most kind of like lives on still today in the Scottish language
for sure.
particularly. So yeah.
Cerberus. So Gaelic is the Scottish, and then Gaelic, as you've wrote there, is Irish.
Yeah.
That's the more you know, and all that.
Yeah.
The
The
more you know.
languages are very similar though. My parents are Irish, and they teach Irish in schools, like quite, way more than they don't really teach Gaelic in schools here.
They have
But they teach it.
they have like specific skills, but yeah,
Yeah, but they wouldn't teach it as like, but like every child in Ireland must learn as much Irish as they possibly can. Like you do Irish exam, you get like bonus points in your exams if you take them in Irish. They like really encourage it. But yeah, so my dad can watch, can like kind of make out what's going on with Scottish Gaelic, because it's just such a similar language, and they had like share a lot of the same words and like language structure and things. So they are very similar. And then of course Scots English is a whole other kettle of fish as well. That's not to be confused with Gaelic, which Scots English is like, I don't know. That's like kind of like a dialect, kind of like its own language.
that a lot of that goes on in Wales actually as well, and trying to encourage people to speak Welsh and just try and keep a hold of that national heritage. Like, I think it's now mandated if you work in a government position, you have to start the phone call in Welsh and ask them if they want to continue this conversation in Welsh. And all of
Yeah,
the because I done my masters in a uni in Wales, and all of the emails, I think the first half of it was all in Welsh, and like the second half of it was also in English. You'd have to like scroll a little bit, but it was always
interesting.
yeah, it is interesting. I don't
An ambulance went past me the other day, and it had said "ambulance CS" or something like that in Gaelic. And of course, like nobody where I'm living can speak a lick of Gaelic, but the ambulance still has it on Gaelic on, just in case.
I lived out in the
You never know.
Hebrides when I was younger, and Gaelic was an optional language that you could take in high school.
Really?
Yeah, so it was French and Gaelic.
How long did you live there for?
I lived in Isla for a couple of years. I lived in Mull when I was younger, and also down like Campbelltown direction.
Wow,
Macranish. Yeah, I'm a
there you go. You
I'm a traveled young man.
Yeah, and yet you've turned out fairly normal.
Well, that's why.
You think you'd be talking funny if you'd stayed on Mull? Probably.
I would be a bit of a trickster. Yeah,
Oh, aye.
thank God. Thank God
Oh,
that didn't
aye.
happen.
Oh, aye.
So a trickster for any other context from people as someone that talks a wee bit like this, eh? The rest,
Chukter spelt. I'll put it in the chat here. I believe that's how it's spelled. Chukter. It basically someone from out in the sticks, right?
I think you've got that wrong actually. I think it's Teuch. But there could be
Yeah.
there could be some differences
Yeah,
in
yeah.
local dialect as well.
Oh, Jade coming in with the woad facts. So it's the leaves, not the flowers.
Ooh, okay.
By the way, Spudgy, I saw your comment about my lack of hair, and it's because
That's a barnet,
I
isn't
got
it?
it all chopped off today.
That is a barnet.
So no more good guy. We're turning into bald guy.
Bald guy number 2.
Yeah, yeah. Um. Okay, it'll grow back. Don't worry, Dave. All right, next Civ.
Franks.
The Franks.
The old alliance.
The Franks. Don't mind my really noisy scroll wheel. So the Franks, of course, represent the French. In the game, the Franks are one of the strongest cavalry civilizations owing to their strong food economy and the extra hit points on their cavalry units. And due to their mobility, we can expect to see them picked on open land maps. Um, yeah, that's really the Franks. That's the horse. They make horses and they run around quickly. You probably won't see them on water, and you probably won't see them on the close maps.
Don't forget the taxman.
Oh yeah, the throwing taxmen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they help deal with the Franks' greatest weakness, which would be infantry. Okay, so the friendly connection between France and Scotland dates back to the Old Alliance, formed in 1295 during the First War of Scottish Independence. At this time, Scotland and France were both enemies of the English, so this alliance lasted several generations, whether or not the two kingdoms were actually at war with England. In 1429, now if you played the campaigns, if your only knowledge of history is from the campaigns, you might not know this, but in 1429, Scottish soldiers came to the aid of Joan of Arc in her famous relief of Orleans. That is a mission in the campaign, but there's no talk of Scottish soldiers.
You didn't take French in high school, did you?
Me?
No, you can.
Well, I did.
Oh,
Orleans. How would you say it?
Orléans.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Orleans.
No, that's. I think you're getting your American geography mixed up there.
When I went there, it was Orleans.
Okay. Carry on. Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted.
So upon their arrival to France, the Scotsmen were described as consumers of mutton and wine. So not much has changed there. The alliance between Scotland and France was never actually revoked, so it still is around to today. And the French influence can be seen to live on in Scottish law and architecture. Scotland, of course, has quite a unique legal system, as far as I'm aware, compared to the rest of the United Kingdom. Like Scots law is quite a specific thing, right? I think it owes heavily from the French.
Are you trying to bounce this one off of me because you've not asked me a good question? Because I have quite a few friends that are lawyers, but my knowledge in Scots law is extremely weak, to say the least.
Well, so is mine. But from what I'm aware, like Scots law is a term that like it really sticks out in my head, right? Like we have completely our own system of doing things that's different from England and Wales.
Thank God.
Dave's asking, you don't use common law system in Scotland? No. So the way it works is,
but we used to have this thing called the EU law, which we used to have to use, but for some reason, even though Scotland wanted to overwhelmingly stay, we're now out of it. But that we're trying to get towards a draw here, and we don't really want to get into these touchy subjects.
There we go. Yeah, not too much politics. Oh, Mr. Fluffy Bunny coming in with a great knowledge on Scots law. Yeah, so it's different from English law. Liga na Alba. There, that's how you pronounce that in Gaelic.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I'm confidently ignorant.
Confident you're winging in abilities, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You ever got in trouble with Scots law before? Or should I not be asking that?
I've never been in trouble with the law before. That's of course I've not.
No, never felt the full power of Scots law. No, I'll join you there.
Never.
And let's keep it that way. To be honest,
I've never done anything bad ever, so it's all good. I have nothing to worry about.
Perfect. Yeah, actually, this is a great time to declare that. Now that this is being recorded and published.
Exactly.
You're actually doing yourself a favor.
The worst thing I've ever done is play with the next civ, which kind of segues nice into them.
The Goths.
Oh boy.
So the Goths in Age of Empires represent the barbarian Germanic tribes who lived from the east of Europe all the way over to the Iberian Peninsula in the west. In the game, the Goths are an infantry civilization primarily, with quite an awkward early and mid game. They can excel in certain situations in the early game due to their instant loom upgrade. However, taking advantage of this can often be quite risky. Um, they're extremely powerful infantry in the late game, and can that infantry flood can overwhelm almost any civilization if they get there. But that's difficult. So expect to see Goths played on mostly land maps, and if it's an open map, they're going to be hyper aggressive, and if it's a closed map, they're going to be super passive. So to history, the Goths precede, or should I say, the Saxons. The Saxons were descendants of the Goths, the Germanic people. And there are records that show a somewhat Danish variant of Anglo-Saxon was spoken in southeast Scotland around the 10th century. So, of course, there was Anglo-Saxon rule in England, of course, as if I've always known this. Anglo-Saxon rule in England from the fall of the Roman Empire in like 400 AD to around to the pre-Norman times up until about the 11th century. And during this time, Scotland was occupied mostly by Picts and Scots. And so in the kind of border regions where we have Dumfries and Galloway now and the borders, as they would say down there.
Oh, God.
That's where you would have seen the most Saxon influence. So, not the direct Goths themselves, but the descendants of the Goths. Of course, though, the Normans soon wiped out the Anglo-Saxons, and little remains really of Saxons' influence in Scotland. So one of the more tenuous links to Scotland, but we still thought that they deserved to be in there, the Goths.
Yeah, Spudgy says Anglo-Saxons can get in the fucking seas. It sounds like we replaced them. So, like, Dumfries replaced one group of bad people, the Anglo-Saxons, and now presently they have, it's just Tory Town, isn't it? So we have one group of bad people for another group of bad people.
There's maybe something in the water down there.
There must be, yeah.
Well, that area is going to be represented in the map, the Southern Uplands, I believe, which is it's like Lombardia. So we should see that in the map pool. And obviously, Paradox is going to be going over these in a few minutes, so stay tuned for the rest of that.
Probably not as well as your very, very great knowledge of these civs that you're transferring across here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is detailed stuff.
Yeah.
I have a degree in the social sciences for a reason. Right, so we just move on to the Sicilians then.
Sicilians up next, yeah.
Okay, so the Sicilians were chosen to represent the Normans for this tournament. In the game, the Sicilians are a versatile civilization with a solid economy and strong units. Due to the extra stone and longer lasting farms, in addition to receiving less bonus damage, they're gonna be stronger in the kind of late early, the mid, and the early late game, if that makes any sense at all. So, like the Franks, other cavalry civilizations, we can expect to see them on open maps. And they have a little bit of versatility with their access to Arbalest as well. So, although the Sicilians represent the Italo-Normans, the language and culture of the Normans existed throughout Northern and Western Europe. And there was a Norman influence in Scotland, and this dates to the 11th century when William the Conqueror, the first Norman king of England, invaded Scotland all the way up to Abernethy in Perth, which is now Perth. So the Normans built many castles and founded noble families in Scotland, including that of Robert the Bruce, who would later lead this Scotland against the English. So due to the number of Norman clans created in Scotland, the influence of the Normans lives on today in the form of many typical Scottish family names such as Bruce, Grey, Ramsay, Fraser, Montgomery, Douglas, and Gordon. Now, they can all be traced back to the Normans.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I,
neither did I.
I thought they were just lovely Scottish names. Pictish names,
Yeah,
of course.
those Bruce, Gray, Ramsey, Fraser, Montgomery. Those are like the most Scottish names I
They're
could think of,
they're extremely Scottish, yeah.
and they're Norman. Who'd have thought?
I mean, it's not my name, so I'm good.
No, of course.
I'm all good.
I got an Irish name, so not even close.
Any fans of the Outlander TV series? As somebody that's worked in the US for a number of years, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with Americans. This has been the opening line from, oh, have you ever watched Outlander? Like, I'm really sorry, I haven't. And I could just tell they were just pining to start a conversation and then cut them off.
What is Outlander?
It's based. I'm pretty sure it was not based on a movie or was a movie before. I don't know, but it's a girl goes back in time and she goes back to like these kind of medieval era. If I remember
Okay,
correctly. If I remember correct.
okay. Yeah. Well, I never seen it, and I don't think I ever will.
Well, that's the end of that conversation, then, isn't it?
Okay.
It's based on a
Okay.
book.
Let's
It's
keep
based on a book.
based on a book.
Did they remember to tell you one? Dave. That's happened many times.
Yikes.
I've had people like tell me the percentages of their heritage, and it doesn't add up to 100% genuinely.
It's because they're not a fool person. If they're telling you that sort of thing, they've sold a part of themselves to the devil.
No comment. No comment.
Um. Yeah. Well, to each their own, you know. If I was born and raised in America, I'd want to be Scottish too.
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Right.
better.
Moving on to the Vikings. So the Vikings in the game are based on the Danes, Swede, and Norwegians of the Viking Age. Um, they serve as an archer, infantry, and naval civilization in Age of Empires, and they have an excellent eco bonus on land with the free wheelbarrow and handcart. But due to their cheaper warships, I think we will expect to see them picked most frequently on water and hybrid maps. So, the Viking longboats first arrived on Scottish shores in the 8th century, primarily as raiders. However, for the next 7 centuries, they made work establishing long term hold over territory in the north of Scotland, notably Orkney and Shetland. These are islands up in the North Sea.
Up there in the Shetland,
Viking raiding.
the Shetland Isles.
They talk so strangely up there.
Well, they have like their
It's
own little language, don't they? That's like in between
yeah,
it's in between like Danish and Scottish. It's the weirdest little thing. I don't know how many times you've talked to somebody from Shetland. Probably quite a bit, being in Aberdeen. But man,
yeah.
that's an interesting group of people.
Occasionally, someone will, you speak to someone from Shetland, and you don't know whether they're like from Ireland or whether like where in Scotland they're from, or whether they have like they're like they're from like somewhere in Eastern Europe and they've lived in Scotland for like 20 years. Like it's such a strange accent,
Yeah, it
but
really is.
it's and you just don't hear it often enough to like know.
No, no, not at all.
But it is it's nice. Um, yes, as I was saying, the Viking raiding parties sacked the Isle of Iona, a little island off the west coast of Scotland, several times, stealing from its unguarded monastery and taking their spoils back home to Scandinavia. It is believed that the term Viking more accurately describes a pirate or raider, or a kind of job, as opposed to an actual ethnic or linguistic group.
Hmm.
So these pirates or raiders may just have been regular guys who would go on a trip down to Scotland on a longboat to see what adventures they could find. Others, of course, had bigger intentions and started colonies in Orkney, and there's a cultural influence lasting through to today. The word bairn, which in Scots English means child, comes from the Norse word barn, and that is still used in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Iceland. So there you go. In modern times, the Scottish relationship with Scandinavia, and particularly Norway, is concerned with two things: fish and oil, and it's a contentious relationship. Dave can confirm that the word for child in Danish is bairn.
Can
There
confirm.
we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's
So
quite interesting, actually.
yeah.
I had no
So,
idea.
it's amazing how much of Scots English and Gaelic is made up of all these different languages and civilizations that we have in Age of Empires.
Yeah. Man,
Yep.
Spudgy's just popping off in chat today.
Spudgy's on one. The history just wakes up some people, you know?
Spudgy's been on the bucky.
Oh yes, that's another piece of classic Scottish culture.
Shall we move on to the wild card?
Yes. Go on. Tell me.
Well, we did poll everybody in the Discord in terms of if they wanted to have the civilizations available, and this is going to be talking about the new ones. Let me just quickly check the poll. We're at 32 for to make them available and 23 for not. So it's quite a polarizing topic. That is just over 50, so I think that's around about 60% of them have said yes to keep them in. And I guess there's a few issues in terms of us for hosts. I think the major concern is competitive balance and making sure that the civs are, one, not ridiculously overpowered, and probably the second thing is making sure that there's stuff that's not bugged, or stuff that's going to be easily abusable. So that's probably the two biggest concerns for us. But then on the flip side, looking at it, we can, the wild card, you only get one per set. So effectively, you can only use one civ anyway. So I think our mindset is the risk is probably quite low to have the civs included. Whereas if we had a proper civ draft, we are drafting civilizations, the risk is probably going to be quite a bit higher. But we've only got seven civs you can actually pick, then the wild card. And are people going to pick Dravidians or whatever civ it is over a more traditional civ like Mayans, for example? Or are they any more broken than Mayans? And I think the answer is probably no. So all of the expansion civs will be allowed, and mainly just because you only get a choice to use one anyway. So if you're going to prepare one of these civs, batter in and go and do it.
Yep, for sure. There are some really strong civilizations out there already. So picking one of the new ones is a risk for sure, and doesn't seem that there's anything completely busted about them at the moment. And anything, if there is, it is going to be patched fairly soon, as far as we're aware, or it would be. So we think it's safe.
Yeah,
and it's exciting to have the new civs in the game. We've never seen elephants involved in battles in Scotland. As far as I'm aware, I think the Battle of Falkirk and Stirling Bridge were elephantless. But it would be cool to see them in there.
Yes, and what's it called? Battle of the Elephants is going on this week. The team games.
Rise of the Elephants?
Rise of the Elephants, that's what it is. So if any major issues do kind of transpire, we're kind of confident that would be getting communicated, considering it is an event that's administered by Nilly. So we think the risk is relatively small to have them included, and we do have a majority of people that do want to have them in there, so they will be available for people to pick, provided you have the DLC downloaded.